all of the energy being directed at whether or not it should be a felony or not kind of seems to be, I don't know, a little bit of a waste. We're still talking about crimes here. So let's talk about what this is and what this is not. One thing that makes this unique is that now, for the first time, there's a judge that has an authority over the former President Trump. That's something that he's going to have to be very careful about in actually what he says and does, because, for example, a lot of the stuff that he posts, especially things that can be taken as threatening, those things are going to be now subject to the purview of a judge who's going to actually impose a gag order on Trump to say, you can't talk about this case anymore. And if he violates that, if that were to come up, then he would actually be possibly facing some jail time as a result of violating court orders. And so there's limits now on what he can say and do, and that's a unique situation for him to actually be in. A lot of questions have come up as, will this actually prevent or stop Donald Trump from running 2024? No, in no way whatsoever. Just being indicted on this crime does not prevent him from running for office, serving in office. It has no bearing whatsoever. And regardless of what you may think about the man himself or what he stands for or whether you like him or not, that is a good thing. It's a good thing that we don't have a system where just because somebody is charged with a crime that all of a sudden they are removed from being able to run for office. Because if that were the case, then we would absolutely have situations where anybody could just charge somebody with a crime, a prosecutor, anywhere, and they just all of a sudden prevent them from running. That would get us into this realm of political persecution, absolutely. And we would see it as a matter of course. It would be happening all the time. Why wouldn't it? So it's a good thing that just this one charge is not going to stop somebody from running. Again, regardless of what you may think about him or anything else. I've heard suggested is now that he's been charged that Trump has a chance to prove his innocence in court. Wrong. Every defendant has a presumption of innocence. You need to be tried. You need to be convicted. That's the way the system works. Does it always work out in practice that way? No. Does it always work out that way in the court of public opinion? Of course not. But you have the presumption of innocence. You're not presumed to be guilty going in. That's important to keep in mind. So this is 34 counts, all Class E felonies, the lowest level of felonies in the state of New York. And the reason it was elevated up to a felony is because the prosecutors are alleging that it was used to cover up a separate crime. In this case being tax law and election law. And so there was mentioned the state crimes, and it was also, there's a lot of speculation that they may be talking about federal election law. So in the process of concealing these hush money payments, that was how it was actually elevated up to a felony level. That seems to be where a lot of the controversy is coming from. And that's one of the things that you hear a lot in terms of what people are talking about this being a legally dubious case, or there might be some holes in this. The real question seemed to center on the ability to actually elevate it up to a felony level. It's only a felony if it's done in the furtherance or covering up of whatever of a separate crime. So that's where some of the questions kind of come in. Is there authority for the DA to actually be able to do that, to elevate it up to a felony, as opposed to having it being a misdemeanor? Because without that felony elevation, they're all misdemeanors. But one of the things that kind of gets lost is that even if it's not elevated up to this felony level, we're still talking about misdemeanor crimes here. They're still crimes. So all of the energy being directed at whether or not it should be a felony or not kind of seems to be, I don't know, a little bit of a waste. I mean, it's an important question, but even if you take those away, we're still talking about misdemeanors. Don't carry any kind of larger penalty, but we're still talking about crimes here. So there's that. Another thing I've heard suggested is that this entire case rests on just the input of Michael Cohen. And that's not true. So let's take a look at this actual indictment here. And here's the annotated version of the statement of facts that comes along with the indictment that was filed. I like this one from the Wall Street Journal that actually removes the aliases and actually inputs the names so you can see and have a better idea of exactly who is being talked about here. But all of these related to the hush money payments. Michael Cohen is mentioned a lot, but you also have the information from David Pecker, the head of American Media, so the owner of the National Enquirer, one of the main sources there besides just Michael Cohen. So you have that attempt to suppress the account of Karen McDougal. And so there's more than just the Stormy Daniels, there's also the Karen McDougal. Another thing that I've seen suggested is that this was an inappropriate case to bring because it should be a federal case instead. Federal authorities, they looked at it, they had a chance to take this case, and they didn't take it, and they didn't go with it. Well, that is kind of misleading as well, because when this case came up, he'd already pled and named a co-conspirator, an unindicted co-conspirator, as then President Donald Trump. That case was kind of squashed. There was suggested to the Southern District of New York attorney, the U.S. attorney there, he was asked to essentially drop the case.
On the eve of Cohen's guilty plea, Maine Justice tried to get our office to remove any reference to individual one, who was President Trump.
And then, of course, there's the whole trickiness of that memo from the Department of Justice saying that you can't indict a current sitting president for a crime. So that's something to look into more too, but it's not just a matter of necessarily thinking that they didn't have enough evidence. It was a matter of just not choosing to pursue it at that time because of the status of the unindicted co-conspirator as the president. Now, why wasn't this case brought after Donald Trump left office? I can't speak to that. Don't really know, but just to say that this should be completely squashed because it wasn't pursued federally, well, there's a lot more to this case than that. Those are some of the different things I heard I wanted to kind of address and kind of debunk or downplay a little bit, correct.